So this is a joint presentation and we'll deal with the process and production of this piece called Raven Throne. It's a striking fusion of traditional craftsmanship and innovative spirit, and was until recently on view at the 2025 Sylvia Rosen Craft Art Biennial at the Burchfield Penney Art Center. The exhibition just closed on March 29th, and so this was this piece's next stop from there. Thomas is a master furniture artisan, and Henry is a master sculptor, and they combine their expertise, design, and production sensibilities to bring to life this singular work. It was juried into the Biennial, the Rosen Biennial, out of hundreds of submissions from high craft and fine art from artisans across New York, Western Europe. Thomas is a master artisan in woodworking, and he's nationally renowned for Roycroft Renaissance custom furniture and design. He's a former designer and model maker. He is employed in his early years by Fisher-Price, while establishing a part-time and freelance design and fabrication business. This business grew to full-time in June of 1987 as the Design Factory, first designing prototypes and architectural models. This is where he honed his attention to detail, and it eventually carried him forward into furniture design. Thomas achieved artisan status with the Roycrofters, a large association, in 1996, and became a master in 1998. He's also an educator, formerly of undergraduate furniture design at Villa Maria and at schools across the nation, and he has an established apprenticeship program. His workshop and design studio is located in East Aurora on Olean Road, where he manages the Schoolhouse Gallery for Roycroft artists. That's at 1054 Olean. And he serves as Mark Jury Chairman and Festival Chair of the Roycrofters at Large Association. He's past president and current vice president of the organization. Henry is a master sculptor with a BFA in painting and illustration from Syracuse University, and a Master of Education in Art and General Studies from State University of New York College of Buffalo. His career path included art education, commercial illustration, graphic design, and the art director of WKBW from 1982 to 1989. He became a manager and director of product art and sculpture at Fisher-Price Toys. And since 2014, he has created art within his own firm, Henry Schmidt and Art Design, as an artist in residence for the Buffalo Maritime Foundry. Henry Schmidt has been a Roycroft Master Artisan since 2020, and is an exhibiting member of the Buffalo Society of Artists. He has exhibited work in a number of group shows, including the Artists Group Gallery in Buffalo and the Burchfield Penney Art Center, and Henry has also completed commissioned work, including the 155th New York Regiment Monument to commemorate the Civil War dead. The monument has been incorporated into the Naval and Servicemen's Park at the waterfront. And please give them a warm round of welcome.
Thanks for coming tonight. Tom and I are kind of excited about showing the process and how we came up with this, and some of the things that we had to work out, and some things that was your post-zone challenges, okay, and there was a kind of more redirection of some of the things that we do. So
Yeah, it's for me. It's like the challenge is what it's really all about. Doing something different. I don't like to do the same thing all the time, so I always like a good challenge. And for years. A couple of years, Henry's been bugging me about doing something.
Yeah, I said, Tom, Tom, we should really try something together. And he's going, oh, yeah, that sounds like it. But he's so busy, but we did find time, and I think we both learned a lot about, is this kind of project, and where it has a lot of future potential to it too. So if we want to get started here, all right, that's kind of our little intro here. 2 masters, 1 vision, Roycoft master artisans on tap, Schmidt, to create the Rapin throne of old expression, time honored craftsmanship, and infused in innovative design. One of the impetus for this was we talked about the Biennial down at the Burchfield, and that whole tradition that they have of bringing that arts and crafts together for fine arts. So we said, we should really, think about creating something for that. So that was probably the thing that motivated us to get started.
Yeah, I mean that my first introduction to that exhibit or competition was through Tammy Fuller. Tammy, a good friend of mine, got into the show in 2 years ago, and inspired me to, after seeing all the works of art and everything, to really jump on this with you. And we actually met at the show, and you and I talked about it and said, let's make it happen. So this is the result of that.
Right. And the best thing about this picture, see, we're still smiling. It was a pretty interesting thing. I mean, really, it was pretty. We worked together quite well, and you'll see how much fun we did have doing this.
Absolutely.
This was, when I first approached Tom, I said we should do a project there, and I had this thing about this throne, and I have this thing about ravens. Ravens have such cool mythology about them. You'll find them in every culture on the planet, and they all have, they've been, had significances for over the years. So this drawing on the slide, that was the very first drawing, and that's how usually I work. I have an idea and I just slap it down, and where it goes, and I have books and books of these ideas, and I don't throw anything away. I haven't thrown anything away for 40 years. This should better than my wife, but you always can go back. And then that little drawing evolved into this little bit more of a refining, and that's exactly what I gave Tom.
So that's the sketch that the first thing I saw, and I'm like, okay. Now I work a little bit different than Henry. Generally, when I work on something, I do complete full drawings and work everything out on paper first, so that I know exactly what I'm getting into and what I'm doing. On this job, I did not work that way. This job, I just did really rudimentary sketches, which is new for me. I mean, I need something to tell me what's going on, but basically, this is how I sketch. It's almost doing a mechanical drawing. That's normally what I do for customers. But I decided on this one, I'm just going to let it flow as we go. And the thing that we started out with is Henry said, I want a Gothic throne. The Gothic to kind of match, meet the Raven, the lore of the Raven and all that stuff. And I thought, okay, we can do Gothic. And then I looked it up online, and you can buy Gothic thrones online for like $500. And I said, that's not going to work. I said, we have to do something that's going to challenge me and make it interesting. So I decided to do Charles Rolfs. Everybody here know who Charles Rolfs was? Charles Rolfs was a furniture maker around the same time as Albert Hubbard and the Roycrofters, around the turn of the century. And he lived in Buffalo, and he did what he called artistic furniture. He didn't like the term arts and crafts. He called it artistic. And the things that he did is he did all these little widgets and curlicues and all that stuff. And he was very well known for doing that, also known for doing a lot of carving. So it kind of fit in with what we were talking about. Also, the Burchfield Penney has a really extensive collection of Charles Rolfs' work. So it kind of fit in with the whole theme. And that's how this whole thing came together.
Yeah, and when I saw that, and like I said, I threw that little sketch to him, and then he said, come down. He said, I have some drawing. I did a drawing, and I looked at it, and I go, wow, that's cool. And that was that was the neat thing about the collaboration. because we kind of work independently but together. You know, we let each person kind of roll with what they are doing, which I think was a really good way to go, instead of trying to dominate and say, "Oh, this is my vision. I just want to use your skills to see my vision come to fruition." But that was never the case, you know.
So then I started working out the material and how I wanted to do it. And one of the most notable parts of this piece is the base, the legs. I just didn't want to do straight legs. I wanted the legs to cant out. I wanted them to be big. I wanted it to have presence. I feel that a throne needs to have presence. So it got a little bigger than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it did.
But when you came down and saw it, you liked it. So I mean, that's so weird for me just to do a sketch like that and then work from it, because most of the time I'm doing drawings. One of the things I learned from a mentor of mine many years ago is if you have a design problem, the best thing you can do is you can lay it out full size. You can do it on the drafting table or on your workbench. You can lay it out on paper full size. And some of the drawings you can come up and look at later are some drawings here that are actually full scale drawings of the piece. And that kind of gave us the presence of how big it was going to be. So that's where this came from. And then that's the cut list, which I do a cut list for every single job, and it tells me all the pieces I needed. This one was done out of walnut, and the unique thing about this is walnut is more of a richer wood, I believe, than oak. Oak has got such a heavy grading, but walnut is much more refined. And this walnut happened to be air-dried walnut, which air-dried walnut is just color-wise unbelievable. You get what I would like to say pinks and purples and stuff like that. And you're taking a risk because when you work with air-dried lumber, it's not dried all the way, and you have some issues with wood movement and stuff like that. But the color of this is just unbelievable. Most of the time when you get kiln dried, where they bake the wood after they've sawn it up, that has a tendency to homogenize the wood, and it turns it into like a chocolate color, and everything's consistent. And I like the fact that nothing is consistent on this, that the air-dried lumber really just brings out the tones in the walnut.
So when Todd came up with that kind of design direction, and we established the kind of part backrest to it. So then I started thinking about how do I integrate, how do we integrate the raven into it? And my experience at Fisher-Price, because I work with design quite a bit. I mean, you're a support mechanism to design the art and sculpture department, but it was all about drawing, and more drawing. And I had sat in meetings, concept meetings, room maybe a little bit smaller than this, but the entire walls were covered with drawings, hundreds of drawings. It was amazing. And they would go through each one of them and go through. So that's my experience of one of my experience of Fisher-Price was, this whole design process and how important drawing is, and, how do you keep, thinking about iterations. And like all art things that you do, usually the first idea you had is the one that you kind of go with, but you do put yourself through the paces of it. And at Fisher-Price, you can never put one drawing in front of anyway. So this was part of my process. This slide's a little bit that was the final design that I did. It's a little bit out of sequence, but you can see a number of different variations, once you get a kind of a theme going. And then it brought, as part of the development process, was the wings. We talked about wings on the sides. How do we do something with the armrests to make it a bit different? And the first idea were these trying to be elaborately carved wing things. And then I kind of looked at it and said, boy, I gotta be out of my mind. So start thinking about simplifying the shape a little bit. And you can see how those more detailed traditional wings started to more develop. And again, picking up from the raven, the kind of Celtic design, kind of Viking.
Yeah, the Viking there.
That was there that in the was present in raven. So I said, let's bring this down to the wings. So, and that brings us to the fabrication part.
Yeah, so the fabrication really was, as you see there's the base. So that was the first thing that we got done, and that's probably not even glued together, and that's probably just dry fitted, so that Henry could come down and get an idea of the mass of this thing and what we were going to do.
Yeah, I was like, how big should the bird really be, and then, how does it fit proportionally to the masses?
So from there, what I wanted to do is I wanted to, sometimes you can sketch right on the wood, but when you're repeating things, for instance, the aprons on this and the arms, it's easier to actually make a template. So what I did is I made up these templates, and these templates are right up here. You can see those, and they're just 1/4 inch MDF. And what's nice about that is it's really easy to work, it's really easy to refine, and you can get the shape as perfect as you want it to be, and it has to be because you're using basically a tool that's going to be guided by that template, and that's going to be laid on the legs, it's going to be laid on the aprons, and that's what's going to give me those shapes very quickly, because you don't want to spend all day just working on these things, and you want them to be perfect. So that's what templates can do for you. And then what you do is you basically glue those on, you tape them on, you screw them on. There's various ways that you can do it. Most of the time it's double face tape, and then you flush trim it with a router. So you cut close to the line, but you leave enough of the line that you can clean it up with a router, and it makes it perfect. And that way you have duplicates of each thing, and that's why the arms are symmetrical. The rails down below the seat are symmetrical. So that's basically part of the fabrication. And especially when you're doing a Rolf's piece, because Rolf's did all these crazy things. I sat there with French curves and stuff. These are all hand drawn onto the templates, just playing around with this, the different curves and the different iterations of each one until I got what I really liked and wanted. So none of this is really a duplicate of what Rolf's did. It's more inspired by what he did, just taking some of his little details and then using them in a different way. And I do that a lot in my work. I like to be inspired by other people that have come before me. There really are not a lot of original ideas out there anymore. So I like to actually just take what's happened in the past and make it better. So from there, I mean, these are held together with a mortise and tenon. So there is a tenon or a tongue that goes into the leg that sits into the mortise, and that's what locks that whole piece together. And I really just like the look of it right there. I think it's really
Oh, I know. When I saw that, I was like, wow, this is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean that's what really kicked us into gear and said let's make this happen. And you could see the raw walnut just looks beautiful right there. And again, you're talking about the little details here going in and making all these little things. And Rolf's was a genius at that. And his furniture is really, I think the word that says it the most is quirky. His furniture style, his artistic furniture is very quirky and very interesting, but it's just different. You have to really like this to want it. But he's done some designs over the years that I thought were just, like some of the stuff we saw at the Burchfield that day,
Right.
we weren't impressed by.
Yeah, he's from Buffalo. What was it? Where did you live? Town?
He lived right downtown, yeah.
Right
I think he was
downtown.
on Albert Street or something like that.
Right, and just a guy, and it's kind of a quirky guy.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with his work, it's worth looking it up and doing a little exploration there. And you can go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and one of his chairs is sitting there right next to all the Frank Lloyd furniture and everything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the arms were interesting because I was running out of that air dried walnut. So what do you do when you have this one of a kind air dried walnut? And if you want to go up a little bit later and look, there are some areas on the back of this arm here where there was insect damage in the wood, and some insects that got in there and actually bored into it and all that stuff, and just really had their way with it. So I went in there and filled some of it and then hand painted some of it. It's almost impossible to make it look perfect. But then again, I kind of like the fact that that it's not perfect, and that there was that little bit of insect damage on there. And the reason that I kept these pieces, again, I was running out of the air dried walnut, and these were my last two pieces, and they were perfect. They were symmetrical. Just one had insect damage on it. So you know what? I used it anyhow. I don't care. So.
And when you start something like this and you have limited materials that you're working with, so it becomes a little bit more pressure and everything. So that's good.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite designs that he did, and he used this a couple different times on some end tables and things like that. And I just thought, boy, that's really screaming out to be a light hit. And I've used this before. I used this on a goodie box, I think 3 or 4 years ago. As a matter of fact, Addie Cancella is the one who won the goodie box, which is the first time an actual Roycroft artist who won the goodie box. And it has that design on it.
Explain a little bit what that goodie box is, I guess.
Yeah, the goodie box is something we've been doing for the past 20 years. The original goodie box was done by the Roycrofters, and it was a wooden box that had all kinds of goodies in it, like crackers and biscuits and candies and all that stuff. And it was given away as a premium by the Roycrofters. When you bought so many books, you would get this goodie box, which was like insane to give that away. So what we did about, I think we're on year 22 now or something like that. We started every year, one artisan would make a box, or sometimes a collaboration between artisans. They would build a box. It doesn't have to look like the original goodie box. And we've had some interesting ones over the years. I've done it 4 times. I'm doing it again this year. So this will be my 5th year. And we donate that to the organization. And then a lot of the other artisans donate goods to that. So you get the goodie box and all this other stuff, and generally the total is up around $8,000 or $9,000, and one person wins it all. So if you've been to our shows, you've seen the goodie box raffle, and that's pretty much what that was all about. Yeah. So here, this was another thing that I had in my head for a very long time, and you can see it here on a chair. That is a Roycroft mark, but that is a modified Roycroft mark. It's not the one that you normally see carved in. And so this is where the inspiration came from. This was made by Carl Kemp in the early turn of the century, and this is a copper base that is done with a German silver applique, I think is what it would be called. And he actually modified the mark and actually made the single R. And for years I've been wanting to do that, and I thought, I'm going to use that mark somewhere. And then I ended up using it on a lamp coming up. So this is a lamp. This is the first lamp that I ever made. And I actually hand hammered it and made it look like the base. So I took the base and actually turned it into a lamp. And then I ended up putting the applique on, but I did it in the Castor ebony. So that's cherry that is hand hammered. And then the applique is added to it. So you can see it a little bit better here. So that's the actual applique. Now I did that in 1998. And that's been bugging me for decades to use again. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do with the back of this thing? We need to do something. And it already been established that we were going to do a Gothic arch. And I said, okay, we're going to put the Roycroft mark in. We're going to do it somewhat subtle, but it's going to be big, so it won't be subtle. But I did the same double R mark there, and it came out really nice. It came out like from whenever I have a design problem, I will go out and into the woods. Owens Falls behind my house, and I will walk. I usually walk there 3-4 times a week. When I have a design problem, I just go out there and I walk and think and walk and think and come up with something. And I had this vision in my head, and it's like, how do I do this size? That's very small. How do I make it this big? And it was driving me insane. So then I talked to one of my apprentices, Jeff Nigel. He's been with me for about 20 years, and he is a computer genius. And he works with me whenever he feels like it. He just pops in. We do a few things together. Whenever I have a problem, I will call up Jeff and I'll say, Jeff, this is my idea. Can you make it happen? And he did all the computer work drawing this out. I did a full-size drawing for him. He took the drawing home. He put it into a program, and we cut this on my little CNC, and it came out perfect. And the reason I wanted to do it on the CNC is there's 2 of these. This is on the back as well. So the same mark is exactly duplicated on the back. So it made sense to do it on the CNC and have it cut out like that. So here is the back of the chair. So you can see the back is the same as the front, and then it really came out beyond my expectations.
And it kind of surprised me too. When I looked, he said, we're going to put the logo in the back, and I'm going, ooh, how's he going to do that? But when I saw it, I said, wow, you pulled it off. It really worked well.
Yeah, and then of course, almost all the furniture I do has veneer on it. Why is that? Because we have one of the best veneer suppliers in the world about 15 minutes down the road called Certainly Wood. And a friend of mine, Greg Engel, owns it. So I get to go pick out the best veneer from all over the world and use it in my pieces. And of course, we're going to use walnut girl with walnut. It's just the perfect, perfect complement to the walnut itself. And this is the back, and that is a book match. So basically, a book match is one sheaf of the veneer that is turned over like the pages of a book, and it matches the other side. And originally, that same book match was on the front, and it still is. It's just covered up by the raven.
Yeah, that was,
We'll talk about
then
that.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So I mean, the back of it still looks spectacular, and I knew that going into the Burchfield that they were probably going to display this in some area where you could walk around it. So I always feel that even the parts that you can't see, and this is one of the things that the Roycrofters feel as well. The other artisans that are in the guild with me, is that even the underside of the piece is going to be perfect no matter what. So you can flip a piece over and it's still going to be perfect, even the parts you can't see. So
Yeah, during the jury, that's the first thing
that's
to
the
do.
first thing that happens.
And ceramics, you bring something in, so first thing they do is turn it over to see what the bottom looks like.
Exactly.
If we go back to the wing, well, I'll show you how this was developed. Once I did the, refined the drawing into more of a graphic approach, then we took it and we worked a lot like this, fitting drawings onto the chair to make sure it all looked right and it fit, and the kind of that we were doing the right thing. So we did a lot of that. So then once I took the art that was done, transferred it into Illustrator, and I created a path, a tool path for CNC machine. So then I took the pieces and I CNC it out. I have my own CNC machine, so and you can see how that turned out. But it took a little. I mean, it comes out. You had to go back in hand. There's a lot of hand sanding, a lot of finishing and changing stuff. And then that's how we finally, Tom put the finish on it, we pieced it in, and then it was like the arm on it. Exactly. It was really good.
Yeah, so we wanted it to be black, and so he brought me out the Vasloid, and he also brought me out the Raven. And I said, no problem. We used a black dye on it, and then sprayed clear over it, and just gave us exactly what we wanted.
And the wings are maple, so and the Raven is bass.
What's the joinery to connect the wing to the arm? I actually went up in with dowels, so up into the bottom of the arm. That was tricky, believe me. It was not a fun thing. I was trying to think the best way to do it, and that ended up being the best way.
Yeah.
The piece was already pretty much put together. So yeah.
And I actually those are two pieces laminated together because I didn't have the expertise to cut it on one side and turn it and cut it the other way. So what I did was I cut four of them. I planed them down, cut them, then I put them together and then finished them together.
Exactly.
So it kind of worked. So once we had, as you can see, the full-size drawing, Tom provided me the full-size drawing so I could start developing the Raven. So that was like from those sketches, how it evolved into that. So that was kind of our original intent, was to take it there. All right. But this is how the Raven was actually developed. So I took my drawing, my finished drawing, and then I sculpted it in clay. And a lot of times wood carvers, I know a wood carver will sometimes sculpt in clay and then use that as their model to carve. Mark Carroll, anybody familiar with Mark Carroll? Used to carve down there on the Mill Street, or sorry.
I think so.
No, yeah.
No, yeah. And he did a lot of wood carving. But what always amazed me about Mark, he'd go there, he's doing these big religious pieces, and he had the whole thing done in clay. And then he used that as his model when he was actually carving. So what I did was I worked in the clay to get that spiral. I took the graphic and cut it off a laser cutter and laid that into the clay. So you think of all these little tricks that can help you get there. So from the clay, the Raven, I scanned the Raven, and then it was rough CNC'd out. All right, and then I went back in and hand finished it. took a bit of hand finishing, but brought it down to the point where I feel it was good, and it had a little, still got a little grain in it, which was fine. You know, I think that it when you see it at a certain angle, you get a little grain still in there. It gives you, so you know it's wood, so you didn't want it to look, you know, come off as plastic. You know, looking. And then Tom put the finish on it, and then the crown was gold leaf. I worked with Jonathan Thornton, who taught at upstate in the restoration. He helped me with that. He's a master of gold leaf artist. So it came to the point where now we're trying to figure out where to put this thing. So we got it up there. We're up there, you know, playing this game, and we put it up in the ark, and you kind of like, it's looking it's a little like stuck out there, and it's not quite not integrating. And this is the serendipitous mover. I just like grabbed it and stuck it in that space, and God, it worked. And it fit perfect. It was like it was made for that. Then there was another one of these like aha moments where it's like, oh yeah, that works. That really works.
Yeah, and it really did work. And then it was up to me to, okay, so this panel in here, the thickness is only 1/4 of an inch. And this has to be added to it. So how do you do that? And I had to actually use some dowel centers and be very careful not to drill through, because you would have ruined that beautiful book match on the other side. And then actually just use, because I didn't want to just use glue, I wanted to use a mechanical fastener. And it actually has 4 or 5 dowels in it that actually pop it in and keep it mechanically fastened. So it's in there.
Yeah, we don't want it flying off there when something's in here.
What is the raven made out of? What is
It's basswood.
what?
Oh yeah. So we're back to the beginning. As you can see, the process of how a germ of an idea can develop and do something that is, you know, comes together so well that we forget. Keep the very healthy in me.
Yes. And the original drawings that you did, I did on them. Why did you choose, what was the design idea to choose something that was more asymmetric rather than that graven in the center?
Oh yeah, the symmetry part.
Yeah.
And I think the symmetry was like I felt a little bit, it was kind of contrived a little bit in terms of it was more classic, more something you would expect. And then the whole idea of, because the chair has such symmetry to it, even in its detail. I mean, the detail I would consider the approach that Tom takes. It's symmetrical, but it also has a very organic kind of movement to it. So I said, just to make a juxtaposition, try to do a juxtaposition on this thing, just make it asymmetrical. That's when I started playing with it. And then I pulled the wing off this way, and try to match it with as you can see over there, I tried to match it with the art. But that, and I think that element does make it adds up as that sort of contrast that you're looking for in form.
Awesome. So at this point, we had talked about originally doing a full plank wooden seat, very thick wood, maybe carved out, and make the whole thing wood. And we were running out of time, to be frank.
That was part of it.
And Henry was working on commissions. I was working on commissions, and we've been working on this for months. And I said, you know what? I said, I've got a really great upholsterer. He does excellent work. And I said, how do you feel about a leather seat? And it just fell into place. And we thought, the black leather with the black carvings and everything, it just fit the piece.
And that was part of that. When we looked at those elements, we put that, it's not like you're putting a patterned fabric on there or something else that would compete with the rest of the design. And those touches of black in the arms and the seat and then the bird, and then that little spot of gold at the top. I mean, I think that all, when you think of the design interface and the design kind of collaboration, I think it worked really well.
Yeah,
and
and
it's that thought though.
the upholstery is just, this was Toby Nixon, TJ's upholstery, no longer in business. He was still no longer in business when this happened. But I still went back to him and asked him, and he will still do things for me occasionally. He just got rid of the upholstery business because he hated dealing with the public. And he just said, I'll still work with you and stuff like that. So if any of you want to come up here and ask me who did the upholstery, he's not going to do it for you.
And the cushion softened the whole piece up.
Yes.
It really did.
One of the other things about that is, if any of you know about a chair, and actually even the benches you're sitting in, the back is angled back just slightly. And if the back is 90 degrees like this one is, it's not going to be comfortable. Although this is a throne, and most people don't sit on a throne for very long, or they lean forward or lean on the arms. Frank Lloyd Wright used to do this. He used to do a 90-degree back on the chair. And I've done it before for clients that really wanted it, but you can't sit in this thing for more than 15 minutes. This one is very comfortable, and I toyed with the idea of going back on a 10-degree angle, which is what the chair does, but it would have ruined the look of this.
No.
And also it would have been a look difficult. We were running out of time.
And the throne really is not supposed to be a comfortable place to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
So this slide would have, we could have talked a little bit more about a Raven approach, but I just brought that in as a detail. But again, it was like the universe delivered that thing fit right in there.
Yeah.
It designed it. So that was that.
We used a lot of restraint too. If you think about it, you had talked about doing the raven's eye in gold and doing the swirl on the wing in gold. And then we just stepped back and said, just less is more.
Yep. And just that kiss of the Dolly, I think, just gives it that little touch. And that
Yes.
just
So this is what is actually carved underneath. That's underneath the seat. And I took it by myself to call it the Raven King throne instead of Raven throne, but that's okay. I had jumped the gun, and I told Henry I was doing this, and this is what I do on all the pieces that I do. I always sign and date everything I do. So this is what's actually carved underneath. It was funny when I picked it up from the Burchfield on Monday. They said we had no idea that was signed and dated underneath. He said until we actually started wrapping it and putting it in the truck.
so I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's, even like the parts you don't even see are they have that attention to detail, and that's part of the Roycroft tradition. And this was, we were at the Roycroft by the Biennial, and so we were happy that we could show it there. Okay, what's next? All right. The insanity continues. No. But I've been doing a bunch of drawings and sitting with Tom, and the other day we sat down a little bit and started thinking about different directions. But we're looking into moving into something that is completely different. Try to do something. And these are all one of kinds. They're one of a kind pieces, and they're so they can rift in many directions. So I think,
and I have to say that, I don't normally get to do stuff like this, and I have to say that I had the most fun making this that I've ever done in a very long time. Because when you're a furniture maker and you're basically doing commissions and you're always behind and you're always trying to make stuff happen, and you're always trying to make a living, to actually step aside and work on something for months without, we didn't get paid for this. This was basically just for fun, and this is the most fun I've had in a very long time. And it was just, it just lightens you up a little bit and makes you flex your design muscles and do something that's interesting instead of something that's practical that somebody wants. And that means the world to me. Because, man, I knew stuff is.
And I think, I was excited with working with Tom, and there are so many very talented artists in the group that I would encourage them to think, look at each other and say, is there something we can do together to work on something? And again, it's a learning, it's a way of pushing out of your comfort zone. And I was always tell Tom, let's move on a bit farther.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So that was it. That's the Raven throne, or the Raven King throne.
Does anybody have any questions or anything? This goes. Oh, Mark. Oh, there's me. So I love how the bookend makes it look like a heartbeat coming out of the bottle of the Raven. That is so cool. That's my comment. Question is, yeah, he's referring to this right here. What was the last time? What was the invested time?
You know, I didn't really add up the hours because I didn't want to. I was a little scared to do that, but you know, having done stuff like this in the past, I'd say we're probably somewhere in the 75 to 100 hours range. Just in along those lines, that makes sense to me. We started it in 2024, and I think it was the summer of 2024 we started doing sketch. Henry was doing the sketching, and then we started playing around, and then I really started building it in the fall of 2024, and then we knew the competition was coming up it was going to be November of 25, but we had to have the photographs of this in for the competition.
Prior to that, for
They
the
had to be in
exhibition.
the
So,
spring.
yeah,
So yeah, they had to be in the spring of 25. So we pretty much worked almost six to 8 months on it in the actual working time.
I think having that goal made it happen. I'm not sure what really come about if we didn't really have this like sort of deadline to get this thing done. So would have always been, oh yeah, I'll get to it next week, or I'll put it on the shelf, and I gotta do this first. And so the deadlines are sometimes very good, and it pushes you to really exercise your creative muscles to get things done.
And after all that work, it would have really sucked if you didn't get into the competition. And that was a definite possibility.
Well, then we would have put it on the front lawn and put it on fire.
That's right.
And we'd have a performance piece.
So, any other questions? Yes.
What's the future of the Trump?
Well, it's for sale.
It's for sale.
We'll take inquiries.
We have an adage in furniture making. There's an ass for every chair.
So yeah.
So eventually we feel that somebody will buy this. I've seen stranger things happen, and it is for sale. At this point, I think it's probably going to sit in the gallery down at the schoolhouse. That's a good, safe place for it, and we'll send it out to other museums and stuff from time to time. But it's just a neat piece to have.
Well, we went up for some other exhibition venues that we could fit into it.
Exactly.
Best guess, how many people have sat there?
Well, I don't know about Burchfield. I don't think anybody can sit in it there, but I did have it at the Roycroft Summer Festival at the rink last year, and probably maybe a dozen people sat in it. And you guys are welcome to sit in it tonight if you'd like. It's
$5 to sit.
Yeah. You got to make some money back. Any other questions?
Yes. Is the veneer back to back when you put it together?
No, there's actually a quarter-inch piece of MDF in there, so it's actually adhered to the quarter-inch MDF, but it is back to back, so to speak, and it is matched all the way around. So the book match is also the same on the back side. And that's one of the great things you can do with veneer is you have the matching capability of doing a sequential match on a table or on a panel like this, and you can't do that with solid wood hardly ever. You can do it with veneer because they slice it so thin. Veneer is not garbage. A lot of people think it is. Veneer is one of the highest forms of the furniture making because you're using some of the best wood in the world, and you can do this beautiful design matching with it, which is really great. I think
I had a question, but I think Barry asked it where it was going to end up. But I think this kind of real successful marriage of both your and Henry's work. I think the Gothic is well represented by the Ross design. It's really interesting integration with those organic designs within it. Very successful.
Oh, the guy that you got the concept from, he was around when Pafk was around.
Yes, it was the same time period. He was mostly famous for the Pan American exhibition, which happened in 1901, and he had an entire room in that exhibition. And you can look up and see pictures of that.
So when he was doing his details, he didn't have a router.
No, he was doing everything by hand. And he also did a lot of extensive carving. I mean, really in-depth carving in oak, which is insane. And that was all done by hand. But most of what I've read, Rolf's he had 2 or 3 people working with him. And I think he had a master carver that was doing most of the carving. He was more of the designer, but he also worked on pieces. And that's what I do. I design and do the work. So.
And if you see his pieces, you can tell they were done by hand.
Oh,
I mean, they're competent, but they do have a handed look to them, which I think adds to the aesthetic. That has this like it is a hand drafted. So these little things aren't going to be perfectly symmetrical, but it's all just it just all comes together in one piece.
Yeah.
It's like designing with, like you said, do some with CNC and then you work on it afterwards.
You finish it by
Yeah.
hand, yeah. You finish
Well,
it by hand.
and that's always the thing about with modern tools, from a router to a CNC machine, those kind of things. How do you use that? You asked you the question: is it totally hand done? Is it that? But we always use tools, and I think you'll see pieces that have that in it, but it's not the thing that it overpowers the piece. And people that don't have the experience, it's like doing computer graphics or sculpture on a computer, they've never hand sculpted. You got a lot of young people that go right to digital sculpture, and they don't, and you can tell. And they use a lot of templates. They provided templates, and you can tell. And they don't have their pieces don't have life to them because they haven't let their hand train the brain in terms of understanding those form relationships. And you do need your hand to train your brain. You can't do that on a screen.
I think a lot of people don't, they don't, I know a guy that owns a sign shop. He can't hand do anything. Everything's, he's very good with computers, but everything that he does is with computers. It has to be hand worked. We have to have something else do it.
I think it's best if you can do both. I mean, I rely on CNC a lot now. I have the very small one. It's only 2x3, but I rely on that to make a living. Can I do it by hand? Yes. I mean, I do, as most of you know that know me here, I do a ton of frames for a lot of the other artists. And for years, I carved the Roycroft mark, not by hand. I roughed it out with a router, freehand, and then I carved it. And that would take about 45 minutes to do a little Roycroft work on frame. You can't make a living doing that. And when CNC became available at a certain point, the Roycroft mark, you saw the signature on the back or underneath, and that, the Roycroft mark I use now on my frames is done in 4 minutes. And we had a question about that in the Roycroft jury in our guild. Are you cheating by doing that? And we actually, one of my good friends, James Miller, he was the one that brought it up because he's been using CNC for quite a while. And he said, here's a frame that has the mark on it that's done with a CNC. Is the frame still of high quality? Yes. The frame was still made by hand. The mark was just allowing you to make a living. So the biggest question that was asked is, what did Albert Hubbard do? Would Albert Hubbard use a CNC? You bet your ass it. It was all about frames.
And if you look at the way I developed the Raven, and it went from traditional drawing to hand sculpting to scanning to CNC, and then back to hand sculpting and hand finishing.
Yeah.
So each tool was used in a way to produce the piece.
What Hubbard was doing, though, the material was worth more than the labor.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's the opposite. That's why that is using machines.
That's why you gotta, measure twice and cut once.
Boards were Pafk.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's still too sure.
Anybody else?
Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Henry. It's important to note, both these gentlemen had experience at Fisher Price, and it's always a great thing to remember that both Henry Fisher and Herman Price came from the Roycroft, and so that through line just comes right through. And we were so proud to continue that tradition. So I'll hand things over now to Ken, our executive director. Ken.
Just a note on that, where they came here because of the woodworking tradition. That's not because the toys, all the original toys were made out of wood. So they did come here because of that woodworking tradition.
And Matt, I would like to give a thought. You can see Henry Schmidt's two-dimensional work. On June 6th, we have a show opening in my place. And Henry, you will be able to see Henry's two-dimensional.
And Connie. It's another collaboration. Connie and I are getting together with our worldly self.
What date was that again, Connie?
June 6th.
That's on June 6th. But it's
July
just
17th.
lovely, lovely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We won't keep you. Having watched the construction and sitting kind of passenger seat to all of the ups and downs that went along with that collaboration. It was really interesting for me to see that kind of come to light tonight. So we are grateful always for your presence here tonight to join us and to keep these little journeys going and successful. I would love to see you back again at our June Little Journey, which is the first Wednesday of the even month. So we will be joined by Rob Goller, author and historian, and also a member of our Rala 50 committee, and he'll be giving us a talk that's more historically oriented on a lot of the things that we talk about here in this space. So please mark your calendars, and if you're a Rala member, you can expect to receive an email when the tickets for that go live. As always, little juries are free to attend, part of our public outreach and education initiatives, but members do have the ability to live stream these events and join us virtually from anywhere in the country, which is what you're witnessing over there, photos in attendance. We are celebrating 50 years of Roycroft Renaissance this year. So we have been hard at work for, I think, almost 2 years, putting together a whole schedule of programming to celebrate that. There's a lot of really exciting things happening. On May 30th, we would like to invite everyone now to join us to open the exhibition of 50 years of the Roycroft Summer Festival at the Castiglia Center on the Roycroft campus. We will have an entire archivally preserved history of our work here in East Aurora, and we'll be displaying that to the public thanks to some very generous work by Grace Madrom in helping us prepare for that event. So I hope to see you all there, and you can find more about what we're doing on our website, ralaweb.com, and very soon roycroftartisans.org, which is launching within the next couple of weeks. So please come back and see us again, and do not forget to mark your calendars for the 2026 Roycroft Summer Festival, which is the 27th and 28th, as always, at the Classic Greek. We have board members here tonight with some membership options and a whole slew of posters that we have brought out from the archive specifically to celebrate next month's exhibition. So please scope it on your way out and take one home if you'd like. And we will see you in June, or hopefully May 30th. Thank you.